Councillor Dale. Are there any further apologies?
None, Chair.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 2, appointment of substitutes. Are there any substitute members in here this evening?
There are none, Chair.
Okay. Agenda item number 3. Do any members have any interests they would like to declare under the members' code of conduct?
Yeah, I prefer my partner is an employee of a SEND school in the borough.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hill.
I'd like to declare my daughter as diagnosis recently of autism and likely to be used in services.
Very much.
Early years provider.
Thank you very much. We'll just give Karen a minute to catch her. Any more for any more? Okay, so we'll move on to agenda item number 4. The minutes of the last meeting, which was held on the 17th of July of this year. Are we going to confirm this meeting to be an accurate record of that? Are we all happy with the minutes that's presented?
Yes.
I'll put my John Hancock's on that later, Karen.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay then, lovely. And we've got the public forum as item number 5. Are there any, that's number 6, do apologise, slightly different on here from there. Okay, so item number 5 as on this script is the progress tracker future business. This report captures actions from the meeting held on 17th of July and highlights progress. Whilst there are no outstanding responses required, I welcome any comments from members on the progress tracker and future business. Looking around, I can't see any hands going up. So item number 6 is the public forum. I can't see any members of the public who are in here tonight. Do correct me if I'm wrong. Any members of the public? We've got a bit of the representative of the press and our external partners, but I can't see any members of the public. If anyone does arrive and wants to speak, we'll try and make time for that a later part in the meeting. Okay, so agenda item number 7. Special educational needs and disabilities sufficiency. Can I invite Gerard Jones and Matthew Minot to present this report, please?
Okay, so Gerard isn't here from the Centre Parties, but if I introduce myself as Matthew Minot, I am the interim service director for Education, SEND and Fund Solutions. I'm in my substantive role as the head of education at this moment in time. And so it is myself that's going to present the report alongside Susan Powell, who is our head of SEND and CBT, Child Disability SEND, and Gemma Toby, who's what's your official role for it?
Lead SEND practitioner.
So it's a kind of a joint effort from all of us as presenting it. And we will present obviously through, you'll have had the report, so what we wanted to try and do is just provide you with kind of an oversight of what we'll talk through through the PowerPoint, and we'll get hoping that you'll receive that as advance as well. So you got that oversight. To put a bit of context to the report, obviously we have a SEND and AP sufficiency strategy that has been written in line with a set the self-evaluation that we've completed within that SEND, but also within the elements then of the SEND inspection, area SEND inspection that we received in January, which where we received kind of the middle band of Austin, which was a significant improvement to what we previously had, and knows that there's still significant work that we have to continue to do within our SEND area. And it was essentially it was put together with linking into the delivering better value that again we as a children's services were significantly part of the previous accelerated progress plan and linked to our previous inspection. But then we published our SEND and AP strategy officially then last year, so at the beginning of this year, And then obviously with that, we still had our Ofsted CQC inspection that we had. Obviously, that isn't just us, that is including of health and social care in that inspection, not just the education element of it, where we still said that there was still obviously inconsistent experiences with improvement still needed to be required. And so what we try to provide you with is an update as to where we are with our sufficiency in terms of the tiers that we're working with. And then we'll take you essentially through some of our pressures at this moment in time that we are facing within our SEND area, but also hopefully some solutions and some asking for some support from you as a committee and to work alongside us to where we think we can still support and where we can still make those progress and those changes.
Good evening, everybody. For those of you that were here when we presented last time, this is just a very quick potted version, but for those of you that haven't actually had sight of the Centre AP sufficiency strategy, it is on the local offer if you haven't already had access to it previous to this meeting. The main premise around this document isn't just about creating special school places. This is about creating sufficiency in all of our schools. And there are essentially 3 tiers to that. So the first tier is very much around that universal and early intervention. So the idea would be that we try and support our young people as much as possible within our mainstream settings, in their local settings as well, which ultimately we know that it takes a village to raise a child, and we want to keep our young people and our children as close as possible to their homes and their communities as we can. So the idea around this would be that we utilise some of the funding that is given to us by DfE to develop an accessibility grant funding for our mainstream schools. Now, we've already had some success with that. We are in the process of really creating a formulated process that all schools, including academies, can access. But already last term, we've supported our maintained schools with sensory rooms and breakout spaces where they can teach their SEND pupils in quieter groups as breakout spaces. And I can give you examples of the schools that we've worked in already as samples to support the wider running of that. But coming to October half term, we'll actually present the schools with a really formal process that they can access those grants. They do have to go through a process because we want it to be fair and equitable, but we also want to see the outcomes. So the impetus is on the schools working with us to make sure if we give them a sensory room, it's absolutely used to the best accessibility. We've also embedded in the last 12 months our ordinarily available inclusive provision document. If you haven't already seen that, again, it's on the local offer. If you Google WOAIP, you will find it. All of our schools have now got access to that, and we've had it badged as a Bible for a lot of our schools. Actually, as a local authority, other local authorities are looking at us and how we develop that so that they can develop it in their own local authorities. And we've also developed a really robust STEM network for our SENCOs, which has been a real strength, I think, of our schools, being able to collaborate, work together, and also giving us opportunities to impart information and knowledge to them. So that's tier 1. Tier 2 is an outreach model. It's about utilising the resources and the expertise that we've got in the local area, in our special schools, in our bases, in our mainstream schools actually as well, but utilising that to develop the workforce and to support our pupils through an outreach model. Now, at the moment, we're still going through funding models on how we can actually afford that. We are having discussions and engagements with our special schools. We're looking and outreaching to other local authorities that have already done that successfully, and we're benchmarking with those local authorities as well. Meanwhile, the independent element to this is being developed by our commissioning team, who are creating a framework for flexible learning with independent providers. So that's kind of where we've come since we first developed this provision, this document. And then we come to the real crux of it and how we are developing our physical provision outside of mainstream schools. We recognise that this is an area that really does need development. We also recognise financially that is a real pressure. But I think actually when you see what we've already managed to achieve over the last 3 to 5 years and what we are intending to achieve in the future. If I give you an example, 3 years ago, we were still working at around 90 places in our resource provision in mainstream schools. By September 2024, we're aiming for 240 places. So that's increasing the provision we've already got and creating new ones as well. And I think it's testament to our mainstream schools that they are really on part of that journey with us and creating that resource provision. And then we're working very closely with our specialist schools to create additional provision for them. So recently, we've worked with the Briar and Woodsetton and supported them as part of their journey towards academisation, and that's been closely in connection with us. But we've also supported them with the creation of the Unicorn Centre. So if any of you are familiar with the Unicorn building up on Brettle Lane, we were able to secure that for the use of the Briar Centre as an annex to satellite. There are already children in the site. There are already some very happy families that are utilising that very specialist provision, which has also allowed us to put extra capacity within their schools as well. Aylesbury, we are developing additional classrooms to help them with their existing capacity. And Pensmeadow, obviously, got that as well. I think it's fair to say we are continuing to have regular conversations with members, with corporate landlord, and you know, with yourselves around looking at other buildings that are potentially usable within Dudley. So being able to utilise the assets we've already got, so that we're not creating brand new, but we're actually working with what we've already got.
So in terms of some of the demand for us and some of our financial pressures at the moment within our SEND area, one of the key parts for us at this moment in time is through our education psychology team. The education psychology service sit under education at this moment in time with head of service Carla Smith. But the increase in particular has been that we've not necessarily been able to grow the actual numbers of staffing within it, but actually then you've seen the increase in the request just within 12 months. And obviously to undertake an EGNA, part of the statutory assessment is normally then there's some support done by the education psychology in writing the support, a level of support that's in there, and the need for the EP service to get involved in that. So at the moment, there's where some of our pressures lie as we try to find ways to subsidise how we might better use our EP service in terms of that, because part of our EP service is, yes, it's working in schools, it's already part of a traded service. Schools will buy hours of our EP to support them in their how they kind of work within their schools to make them an inclusive element, but also then they've got the statutory element as well that they have to complete. So this obviously then has meant becoming delays in the 20-week statutory assessments, and that is an area where we need to address better that element, and that's where a key part of us is needing to do these elements of improving the EP service, and to make sure the statutory assessments are in there, so actually it reduces that 22-week statutory assessment delay.
So, good evening, colleagues. So I think part of this, part of the picture is that because we have an increased demand, we have increased requests for assessments, and we have increased needs within our system overall. That has led to an increase of tribunals that we've seen in Dudley that has been growing, and that growth has continued. The pressure around tribunals, because there's a range of reasons that parents can lodge tribunals. One of those is around placements. It's not the only one, but one of them is around placements. And of course, if we don't have the appropriate placements or the assessment fully undertaken, which we do because we wait for that wider assessment, all the assessment information to come through. But one of the outcomes can be for independent placements, which have quite a significant impact on cost. And the other part that I think it's also just to offset some of those pressures that we've also seen as part of the Delivering Better Value programme that Matthew talked about a little bit earlier. Part of that was really to look at the educational healthcare plans that we have in our system in Dublin, and there was a range of intense work that was done during 2024 where there were a range of the HCPs that was fixed within the system. So the increase didn't grow at the same rate nationally. We were actually lower last year. However, that doesn't give the overall picture because it's offset by the number that we see. So overall, we won't see that again for the current year because it was a one-off piece of work. So we're continuing to see that demand increase this year. So as part of the work that we've done around our self-evaluation framework, and obviously as part of our improvement plan from Ofsted CQC, our self-evaluation framework we have co-produced with key partners, stakeholders, that includes our health, social care and our parent carer colleagues from Parent Carer Forum. That has given us the overall that we now have in terms of our improvement plan for Dudley. And there are 4 key work streams in that. One is capacity, inclusion and excellence. That sits around everything that we've been talking about. 2 is around a sustainable SEND system. That's again the impact across the whole of our system. 3 is the development that we've already made significant strides around co-production and experience-led improvement. So that real engagement with children, with families, with young people, those people who are affected by and access services. And number 4 is insight commissioning and accountability. So those are sort of our key work streams identified by that. Again, that's all on our local offer if you'd like to have a look at that. And in terms of the set, we'll be reviewing that this year and having a look at alongside that. And we have various leads across that partnership who are taking lead on those work streams. And there's 12 projects within that, so there's over 250 activities within that, the whole plan itself.
I think it's important to share that obviously we are accountable with the DfE with this, so we have thought that a bi-monthly conversation with the DfE to see our progress, that kind of a keeping in touch meeting against it. And then we have also a 6-monthly review following our inspection that we had in January. Obviously, the report came out at the beginning of March. So in November, we have a 6-monthly review again with Ofsted and CQC again. It's a level of accountability for us with that. So we have a regular conversation partnership with our DfE colleagues and a regular catch up with a DfE advisor that works with us also on our monthly improvement steering group. So one of the conversations I know that was having was around I've got this one.
Yeah.
Sorry. There's some other risks and opportunities. My slides have gone out a little bit, or deleted the slide even. It's some of our risks that we've got at this moment in time. Obviously on our DSG high needs block and overspend on that. That has had a significant increase because of the need to use independent placements rather than actually anything else. So we were able to, and we've been having conversations with other local authorities as well. And we only last week had a conversation with Coventry Council around how their DSG works and how their high needs block in particular is working. And you look at, although they're obviously a city, in terms of numbers, they're not too different in terms of the amount of children that are in special schools, but they have a significant amount more of placements, both at school age, but also at 16 and 18 plus. So that kind of PFA, that preparation for adulthood, going into some specialist college. They have a specialist college is significantly good quality in Coventry and in terms of price and their resource wise is significantly better resource priced than anything that we have to use, because we have to use completely independent on that 16 to 18 plus for some of our independent areas. So that's where our significant pressures come at this moment in time, and we're trying to address them and working with our local colleges to support some of that element of it. You know, and that then relies then on that use of that external placement. But actually what we're trying to also then have is any kind of positive environmental impact, so that actually we can get them not having to go to these independent placements that are further away. Obviously there's an environmental improvement there, as well as a reduction in transport costs. And I think it's really important to say that, you know, I know we do have our transport, but actually our special school attendance is 3% better than our national And I think that's a key element of that importance of providing the right support for the children who do attend our special schools also.
So the obviously there's an impact in terms of the increase in terms of requests and in terms of the number of placements that are requested in the whole of our SEND system. And one of the things that we have introduced as of September 1st is the change in the model of working for the SEND team. That has been put in place to really support the and to improve the communication based on the feedback that we have from families and from schools, so that the team can really focus on everything they can do to support children who either undergoing an assessment or with those who have a plan through the work that they need to do. Some of that change will involve, instead of having a named person, that there will be a pod. So there'll be several pods that our schools and colleges can actually access, and an introduction of a duty system that will support that. So there will always be an element of duty that is so our team can be contacted by phone or by email, rather than waiting for one person to be able to come back and respond in that manner. So we've made some quite significant changes really to how that model is working, to try and support the increased communication and that support around the case officer working alongside each of those pods, which will also then hopefully allow the SEND team to improve the timeliness around statutory duties, because it's part of our improvement plan. It's certainly something that's important, and we've made significant improvements around that in recent years, but with that increased pressure and demand, we had to do something a little bit different to support some of that, and that's what we've started. So we're day 6 in. We've had some really good feedback so far on the data samples we've done to families who've been contacted. It's very early days, and we will keep monitoring and make amendments as we need to.
But it takes away from us the single point of failure. So if you've got a case officer, for example, who's up on, then becomes absent for whatever reason, and then actually we've got a group of people that would be able to fill it ultimately instantly because of that. And so the early days of that seem to have been some good levels of feedback to say that's right. We continue to review if that's right and if it's not as well. And I guess then I think for myself, if they're looking at support from yourselves as working and for our children's services, councillors that support us as well, and Councillor Ridley, that level of, we need to get to that level of financial sustainability. At this moment in time, as we're having to try and find additional funds within our services to put into making sure that we've got enough EP capacity, for example, and we're having to look at where else we might find that from. But ultimately, we need to make sure that becomes a sustainable model going forward. About delivering for children and families. But for us, it's about support for any expansion that we need to do, investing in early intervention, monitor reforms, because actually we've seen now that model in the Unicorn. That's now in place, and that's been because of the support that we've had from council members, as well as obviously from a senior team as well. That actually now we've placed children in there and using facilities that children can access, still being educated within our special schools. And yes, it's used as a satellite. For DFE terminology, it's a split site for the prior school. But what that's been able to do is expand that, and we would like to look at doing that in other places as well. So if there are community centres that are possibly not being fulfilled fully during a day, and actually there's an opportunity there that we can put some sort of SEND support, whether that is through just a school with a resource base attachment to it, or whether that is again a split site with a special school, whether there's those community centres, but also the potential repurposing of other council buildings for both SEND and also for any other alternative provision, because we also have at this moment in time, obviously we've got pupil referral unit, but also as part of our section 19 support is our Territory Learning Centre, which obviously is an academy, but again, we do work alongside the academies as much as we work alongside maintained schools. They've also have that level of resource. So it's looking at that kind of support. And obviously we will continue to know that obviously the white paper or the SEND reform paper is due to come out very soon. In terms of talking with the DfE only this afternoon about that, they are still hopeful that's coming out, even though there's been some ministerial change, not a Secretary of State, but within some of those elements. So they are still hoping that that will continue to come readily available. And we'll need to make sure that we're addressing that within there. And again, we'll seek some support from yourselves regarding that. So on this one,
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you to our three officers for giving that presentation and that report. And I think that there were some real positives in there. So I would like to take 2 minutes to thanks to you and your officers for some really great work, particularly for the creating the satellite site at the Unicorn Centre and other expanding other internal provision. So with that, I'm going to move on to questions. If anybody would like to raise any points in relation to the report you've just heard. Councillor Smith.
Councillor Smith. One of the things that you mentioned was holding on to the current buildings that you've got, and you're quite proud of achieving that. I've got a small understanding of an SEN school, Westminster in Samwell, and I believe that they are a rented service from landlords. Is there a reason we're not looking at moving towards sites that are more suitable through the rented system?
We are trying to be as flexible as possible at the moment. So we are looking at sites that are potentially for disposal that we already own. We're looking at how we can look to working with maybe church sites, community sites, youth centres. Essentially, we are open to looking at whatever is out there. So if a rental situation did come out, to our way, that we could have a look at. It's all about creating the proposals at the moment so that we can see how it looks within the bigger picture as far as capital, the DSG and the general fund, so that we can make sure that we're utilising the right buildings.
And just on top of that, the 2023 paper that came out, the Centre AP paper, came out, very much talking around, and the latest high needs use of high needs capital allocation was very much talking about, okay, looking at the capacity you've also already got in your schools. And obviously we know that as numbers aren't as, aren't increasing at primary levels, which is why, again, we're able to use some of the capacities in there, and that will come through to our secondaries. And that's why, again, we're trying to use the capacity in our schools first as well, because actually you not necessarily have to increase your own paint out and use that whole levels of revenue. But we are open to looking at all those things and having those conversations. Again, we can study it on some of those should we need to.
All right, thank you.
So Redden.
Thank you. Councillor Sue Ridley, Shadow Cabinet Member for Children's Services. I think we need to just blow our own trumpet a bit, Matthew, if you don't mind. Saying one of the reasons that we needed to change this, and it is alluded to about transport, we had small children, toddlers, nursery children being transported from one end of the borough to the other to get to go to a specialist provision. And that was wrong. There was uproar when we tried to change it. Oh, you can't do that, you can't do. But why would any mum, and I've got to say, why would any mum want to put a 3.5, 4 into a taxi and say, bye-bye, off you go. Spend 2 hours. Let's face it, there isn't anywhere you can get to in Dudley before 9 o'clock in the morning where you're not sitting in traffic for at least an hour. Why would anybody think that was right for a child? And I think it's not just about it's about actually applying everything we do to the young children, to the actual individuals that we serve. And I'm glad that we've changed it. I'm glad that we're moving to local provision. I think, and it's also really important because you shouldn't. I've had many arguments over the years with various directors who've sat there telling me, "Well, why has this not been improved? Because you've just moved them from their area there where they live. You've taken them right across the other side. You expect them to perform. Children are not circus performers; they are children, and they need to feel safe and they need to feel they're in the right place." So a very positive report, and I think we are making efforts. you've not really said how hard the money is to come by. The high needs block is overspent every year before we even get it, because we just, that is what it is. I know we've been demonised for the last couple of years as causing all the council's financial, but these are children. If we haven't got another penny left in the treasury, I wouldn't give a toss. If a kid needed it, they get it,
Yeah.
If somebody can't have their pothole fixed, my heart bleeds for them, but this child needs it more than them. So, let's be honest, when you see those reports come back saying, what would you like your money spent on? Potholes is top of the list, and poor kids who need support is left at the bottom. And I think the other thing that we need to emphasise is the fact that we are looking at early years. We're looking at early intervention, and that's our hubs. That's the work that's going on in our hubs. We praised them at our last meeting. We will continue to praise them because that is where the work starts. I have always said, and people that have been on these committees will know, I've always said my worst nightmare as a chair of governors was having a report saying these are the children that can no longer be given mainstream education. And we're talking of 4-year-olds, It's me, 4-year-old. They may have difficulties, but it doesn't mean to say that you've got to take them out of where all their friends are. It's important that we have local provision. And we do have a great deal of private provision across the borough. It's also very expensive, and I have yet to find out how they manage to justify that expense, varying from, I think the cheapest one in our ward is 30 grand a year. And I think it goes way, way beyond that. But you have to give children what they need. And so I'm not saying they shouldn't be charging that, but it's just when you can.
The right provision, Councillor, doesn't it? Obviously, sometimes an independent placement is the right provision for them. But ultimately, we also have to strengthen our own education system and our own schools that can support better in our mainstream elements of it to improve that element. And that's what we need to also pick up. But I appreciate that, Councillor.
So, I think you're doing a very good job, and it will continue, and hopefully we'll continue to move forward.
Councillor Basin.
I probably should know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it because I don't. The delays in the 20-week statutory assessments, does that attract any, because it's a statutory assessment time, does that attract any penalties to the council?
No. It is.
Yeah.
It doesn't. However, you believe there's some
is what that does. So it impacts and then you obviously have the stage 1, stage 2, and it may go to the ombudsman in terms of that process. So it has a process, but it's not a direct impact in terms of just by missing. So yeah, thank you.
But questions are asked on the DfE as to why that is as well.
So
You would be asked that in your regular meetings with the DfE.
we have a monthly.
Do they then kind of set you targets to improve, to do things differently?
Obviously, targets is advice as to how we might do something different, or put us in contact with another local councillor who might show some good strengths in that element of it. It works both ways with that.
Yeah, we have been improving year on year in terms of average bit timeliness since 2019, or 2020 really, that we started that improvement around the 20 weeks to the point where actually we're just slightly better than national last year. This year has been more of a challenge. So.
Councillor Henny, put your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Perhaps I should declare an interest on this. I didn't do it earlier, but now when I saw this, I'm looking at the tier 3 slide. So I have a grandchild who actually goes to Aylesbury and I think my question is very much around, you set out new improvements to the Briar and so on, but there are specific sort of completion dates against all this. Having visited Aylesbury half a dozen times, maybe, to go and visit the child and meet the staff with my daughter and so on, it is tight. It does need new work, new classrooms. I'm very much welcome that in the report, what you are doing there. But you don't seem to set out when a completion date might be for any of this work that you are planning or is planned? So that's my question.
To respond to that, thank you. So if you drive past Aylesbury at the moment, you will probably see that there is work going on as we speak. The commencement of that is, my understanding was Christmas, I think, if not April. It's a bespoke building that is in between Aylesbury and the private school that is behind that. We are working to as tight a time frame as we can. It's not about creating additional capacity. I need to put that out there. We are mindful of how tight it is at Aylesbury and the good work that they do there. And this is about enabling them to manage the capacity that they already have effectively. And also bearing in mind that their most recent Ofsted inspection very much cited the fact that the level of complexity and need in that school has increased as well. So, you know, the pupils that they have need additional space as well. So I'm not going to focus specifically on a particular time frame, but I can find that out for you and send it to you if you'd like me to. It's imminent because the work is there.
It's nice to hear some completion dates.
It's definitely on track, but I don't know I think it's April, but we can probably find out. But I think it's remembering then that a lot of our special schools are landlocked. There's not a lot of space left in them to find that capacity, and the schools themselves are very good at trying to find that themselves first and coming to us to support them should we need to through things like high needs capital, and we have quite a robust procedures to support them with that. That's what a lot of Unicorn has been completing through the use of that high needs capital allocation, and again, they're quite happy that we're using that for those reasons.
Thank you for that.
So it's all.
I was just going to come in on to give you some assurance on the timescales, not for Halsbury, it's a bit further out, but Penn's Meadow. This morning I visited myself and met Marie first time. It was a force of nature in my happen. Absolutely fantastic with her pink hard hat on and pink ivies and Marie written across the back. I can just see her now with those young people when they do get in there in January. So that's due to transfer the children across from the site where they're at the moment and taking them to the new ones in January. The official opening won't, we've agreed this morning, take place till sort of after half term because they need to settle in. And what we don't want to do is be having, a grand opening and showboating, how good that school is until all the children are in there and settled. We don't want to do any disruption on that. So that will be taking place in January with, I think, the build. I've met all the foreman and that today, sort of completing the main stuff in November, but then getting all the stuff inside there. But that will take place in January. And I'll just take the opportunity as well to reiterate Councillor Ridley's, my partner in crime there. For Children's Services and Education for the welcome that they're giving me, coming in there and understanding. Again, just thank you for the work that's going on. It's quite clear to see, and all that work I've been understanding over the last few months since taking a role, I can see it in this report. So thank you for taking the time over the last few months to put this together tonight, Sue and Matt and Gemma, and helping us understand the great work that we are doing on that journey to improve.
I'm not seeing any other hands
Can
go.
I just make one comment? Just to say, about you're looking for other places, asking the community. People have to remember that the latest figures that was only, I think last month they were talking about the lowering of the birth rate is dropping. Schools will have capacity for empty rooms. I know that sounds ridiculous because every school is, you squeeze everything into every space, but that's coming up. So that's why I say we will move forward in a positive manner, because I think some of the problems, or what they're not problems, some of the difficulties that schools have had in finding spaces where these children can have time out, is quite difficult. My own school, we've used every cupboard that you can imagine, but with the numbers dropping, there will be capacity in schools. So that's why I say we move forward with a very positive action.
And those discussions continue alongside the need for nurse replacements and elements like that as well. So whenever we have a discussion with a school around whether there's that capacity to, whether they want to do it through St. Water, there's also that wider looking at the especially the stuff that's coming in on the better start for life as well. So it isn't just a let's have those conversations. It's part of our school place planning and capital group discussions that we have on a monthly basis as well. So it joins those conversations together.
Did a change to be positive in children's services after the kicking we've had for the last 12 months?
So an additional comment, Jack?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's just a plea from me, really. I think we've evidenced, especially through our Ofsted inspection, how powerful it is when we work together. And I think that very much includes the people in this room. Myself, Perry Care Forum, Councillor Little, are looking at developing supported documentation for yourselves, training, upskilling you in understanding more about SEND so you can support your different wards. All I would say is it would also be really important for you to get out and speak to your schools as well and to see the schools in your area, especially if they have resource provision, especially if they have bases that we've commissioned, to see the amazing work that they're doing, because what they are doing is phenomenal. So that's just an urge from me.
Chair, can I just add on to the back of those comments as well? You will have seen an email come out, I think, before summer, and a few of my colleagues got in touch saying, you might want to see this. And it's like, well, it came from us. It was the one about, you know, as Gemma says there, the support package that's going out for members. But what we wanted to do is benchmark what people know already. So I probably will be sending another email out on behalf of Anne just to chase everyone. I think we had a big return after you sent one out a few weeks back, Councillor Lewis. There's a few more that are outstanding, so we're just going to sort of just chase that up a little bit. But then on the councillor portal access, you know, you've got there's like a SharePoint site part to that. We found out that children's, for some reason in the past, there's no information on there around children's. So that's where we are likely to be putting a lot of that information. So as when you've got your residents and parents that are contacting you, frustrated around the system, frustrated around access or timeliness, you will at least understand the system a lot more. And as Gemma said as well, what we'd like to encourage is that I think we're going to try and put some facts and figures around wards, what schools you've got, what's the population, who the heads may be, and to build that relationship. That will really help in this area. It will also help us for those who, I can't remember who's on corporate parenting, but it will also help us with the call out that we're doing for fostering as well. We want to try and get all members really interested into the children's services and education that we've got. So we're going to nag you over the coming months.
Thank you. Councillor Westwood had a hand up.
I'm Councillor Karen Westwood, represent Brockman and Pensnet. I must admit this is like a massive learning curve for me because I've not been on any sort of children's services committees before. So I'm always used to declaring my employment at Russell's Hospital on the health committee. I've just realised I'm actually a governor at Brockman Primary School, so I think that may be pertinent to list as one of my interests, as you say. Now, basically, it's basically an observation more than a question, because I've been approached by a couple of constituents in the recent past over the concerns, the new regulations coming in that have come in on September 1st, and it was both the same thing really. They both had concerns about losing that named caseworker. So it was lovely that the communication was mentioned because that's allayed my fears now. So with some confidence now, I can go back to them and assure them that in fact the communication will be easier and better. So
I think what's just to kind of support that conversation, when there's an assessment underway, they will have a named person, and if there's a specific piece of work, there will be a named person. But the pod system and the GS is so that we can always have that. So it doesn't mean it will be just faceless, I suppose.
Yeah.
It's really
because that was one of the main concerns that I was getting asked.
Absolutely. We would accept an element that was shared with the president.
And like following on from what Wayne's just said, having that information, because we're getting these questions from constituents, and if we haven't had much to do with child services before, it's not there, it's not a hand sort of thing. So you don't want to give them the wrong information.
We want to make a one-stop shop, so it just
Yeah.
helps members,
Fantastic.
helps our residents with, alike and parents alike
That's
first.
absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
And just to confirm, House Reading is end of August, so we should be hopefully ready, hopefully ready for a movement ready for September, 26th for the next year start.
And as the new school, Pensmed, is going up in Brockmer and Pensnet.
Yes.
Obviously, representing that ward. I live within sight of it. I've literally watched it go up from the ground. You know, I'm with the diggers constantly for the last few months. So obviously, as a councillor in that ward, any support would be there. Yes.
Okay, councillor Councillor Lewis, you've got a hand up. I've got a hand up. Before we do that, could I just, not wishing to dampen any of the enthusiasm here, but I'm going to have to insist on a few standards here. So when officers give replies, it needs to be through you, Chair. And if you want to speak, I don't want to stop the conversations, but you've got to raise your hand up, because there's a couple of times that people comment back on things. It was all positive, but other people are in the queue to speak, and we just need to observe protocol. Thank you very much. And with no further ado.
Sorry,
Councillor.
Mr. Kerry Lewis.
Okay.
Words. Bit of positivity. Sorry. I just wanted to make a statement really about the support expansion. I fully support it. It's good to see that we can reuse Dudley Council buildings. I think sometimes we're usually too quick to sell them off, but something, we've got families and children out there who are in desperate need of some provision, and I welcome it 100%. So thank you for what you do.
And that's the for other speakers, I think. Councillor Henny.
Just a quick, just looking at pretty much related to what I said last time. In terms of progress, monitoring some of this work going on at the different, would it be okay to see something probably January, February of next year? Just probably one of you here, or just even email to Democratic Services to say, look, this is where this has got to from today. And then just a request.
Just say that one. I think the more information you get, the better. So the more often we can give you both, the better. Knowledge is power in that respect. But also, this is a 7-year strategy. It's a marathon, not a sprint. But we do expect to see regular progress. Okay. So we would love to be able to offer you that.
Good to hear. Councillor, so would you like to have?
Yeah, this is a final word. I haven't spoken to anyone about this yet, but I was mulling around things as I'm starting to understand things, and I think what you've just asked for there, I haven't spoken to Gerard or anything about this yet, but whether we've got capacity of sort of an ongoing, doesn't have to be a printed one, but like that resource I spoke about earlier, just a newsletter, for a frequency yet to be determined, but I'd like to tell all of our fellow members what's going on, and that could almost go out, wider as well. But from education, this is some of the metrics that we've got, some of the great stories that we've got, some of those really, this is what the difference is that we've made, this is what we've put in, and this is the effect that it's had. So it's sort of, that might fit in with some of that, giving you the reassurance and assurance that we go through some sort of just half a year or quarterly, I don't know, a little bit. I don't want to crowd extra work, but it's about just keeping us all informed.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm going to bring item 7 discussion to a close, but just to do in summary, I want to thank everybody for their contributions. I think it's fairly universal across this table that we were all very proud to read this report, and it contains some really good examples of progress of how we're building our provision in-house. Thank you very much. I'm going to move on to item number 8. Can I invite Tracy Curran to give the report, please? And I ask members to keep questions to the end. Over to you, Tracy.
Thank you. I'm Tracy Curran, I'm the complaints manager, and the report's been brought to yourselves today to seek approval for publication. Every local authority will be responsible for social care has to provide an annual report, and this lists all the complaints, compliments, statutory and corporate. This has to be publicised. So this is really to seek approval. So I'll go through the headlines of the report, and then if there's any questions, obviously afterwards. So this report covers 1st of April 24 to the 31st of March 25. So we'll start with the positives. There's been an increase in compliments for the service, an increase of 33. So that's from 93 to 126. All of our upheld and partially upheld complaints are shared with the Centre of Professional Practice, along with any learning. And that's then passed on to any staff. So if there's any training issues, if there's anything that they need to follow through, that's shared with, as I say, the Centre of Professional Practice. And that's also included with any training that we deliver from the complaints team. The Ombudsman share their data, weekly reports, and they're shared to a number of staff, so that they're aware, obviously, of the importance of complaints. So the total number of statutory and corporate complaints received was 301, and this is an increase from 255. So that's an increase of 46. But I need to obviously draw your attention to just how many contacts Children's Services have had in comparison with those complaints. So they've received 16,861 contacts within that period. So it's only 1.79% of all contacts actually resulted within a complaint. And furthermore to that, 0.88% of those resulted in being upheld or partially upheld. So a breakdown of the complaints. So 49 statutory complaints compared to 50 in the previous year. So that's remained the same. The increase has really come within the corporate complaints. So 252 compared to 205. So that's an increase of 47. So we analyse the complaints to ensure find where they sit, whether it's a corporate or whether a statutory complaint. So the statutory complaints, we received 49 of those, 15 were upheld, 31%, and 10 were partially upheld, 20%. And that compares to 50 from the previous year, 16 upheld and 14 were partially upheld. So there's been a decrease in upheld and partially upheld complaints. Out of the total of 252 corporate complaints received, 75 were upheld, 30%, and 48 were partially upheld. This compares to a total of 205 corporate complaints received in 23-24, 60 were upheld, 31%, and 47 were partially upheld, 24%. So therefore, in comparison, 24-25, there's been an increase in the number of corporate complaints, both upheld and partially upheld. Additionally, corporate complaint, there's a two-stage process, as Sue mentioned previously. So there were 10 stage twos, 5 SEN, 2 CDT, 1 family safeguarding team 2, 1 family safeguarding team 6, and 1 children in care team 4. Of those 10 cases, only 2 were actually upheld. Of the 5 stage 2 statutory independent cases, 5 of those were for CDT. And of those cases, 2 upheld, 2 partially upheld, and 1 not upheld. Of the 301 statutory and corporate complaints received, 11 of these were from young people, and that could be from young people directly or their advocates. And the main issues arising across complaints, which is broadly the same as the main reasons for 23-24, communication, delay, and staff attitude. We've had 56 comments received, and 1 complaint progressed through a stage 3 review panel. There's 3 stages within the statutory complaints process, and one went to stage 3 panel. 8 cases proceeded to the Ombudsman, which every right to complainant has the right after they've completed all the process to go to the local government Ombudsman, and there were 8 the previous year. 4 SEN, 4 of them were upheld, 2 family safeguarding, 1 upheld. The 1 ongoing wasn't upheld because obviously this report was, the figures pulled in June. 1 for CDT upheld and 1 for fostering and permanence not upheld. We have no public reports issued against us, and the Ombudsman may issue one if they decide to, if there is a significant amount of complaints and where one particular area where they feel as though the issues needs to be to rise. 49% of statutory complaints received a response within 10 working days. There's a different timescale between statutory complaints and corporate complaints. This is an increase compared to 31%. But overall, 84% of statutory complaints received a response within 20 working days. 16% of statutory complaints received a response over the 20 working days. There was an internal improvement timeframe by the Children's Service Director where they had different target dates which have increased and improved the target scales. So 71% of corporate complaints received a response within 20 working days. This is an increase on the 63%. So therefore, 73% of all statutory and corporate complaints were responded to in 20 working days compared to 68. So that's a positive. When complaints exceed the timescales, we ask for a breakdown of what the reasons are. So the reasons we've had are staff absence, complex cases and other work pressures, and the percentages are listed there as well. As I said previously, we've got 56 informal comments compared to 59, so that's an increase of 44%. I know there's been like many headlines about obviously the increase in complaints, and I think there has been an increase in SEN, but I do need to point out a positive that SEN actually received the most compliments, 37 out of that. So I'll end on a positive note. If there's any questions from anyone.
Thank you for your report.
So there you go.
Return. It wasn't nothing personal, Trace.
It's fine.
It was a great report. Right then, were there any questions?
He is the chair now, though, mate. That's.
Happened that quickly.
Yeah.
We're going to carry on.
Just opening up.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
questions.
By all means, you continue to share this part of the meeting with the questions. I'm happy for you to do that if you'd like to.
Yeah. Questions? There's something I'd like to ask, but I don't know. Could our council a little to help me a little bit, because we have discussed this before, haven't we?
Oh, yeah. I'd like to ask is more of a, through you, Chair, thoughts on, so it's great, Tracy, that we've got all those figures and facts there. I'm someone who wants to know a little bit more about the subjectiveness behind some of them without the exposure of any sensitive data. So have we had any reports in the past where it's got things, and you did touch on a couple there, I think it was communications, attitude, and there was something else that was mentioned on. I don't know how anyone else feels, but for scrutiny, it's like, would you like to sort of, what's that about then? Is that like a team, within our children's and education family, is that a team workforce issue going on there? Is that something that's going on legislatively, something that's changed? Is that had an impact upon the number of complaints that have gone up because something's just happened? So it's just about understanding a little bit of the story behind some of those things. That's what I've got the sense of. I don't know if anyone else feels that way, or if that's been something am I hitting the nail on the head for you, Kes?
Councillor Lewis.
Councillor Lewis. Talking to your inner self there, sorry.
Yeah, more or less so, yeah. Because I think when you've got percentages and figures throwing at you, it's like no disrespect. It's just figures coming at you. And I think sometimes when you've got it, well, this is the complaint. What did we do about it? What was the outcome of it? And that's like,
there's a number of these, and the reason why these complaints are coming in is because generally it's about, we've got a whole new workforce that this is completely made up. I'm just giving it as an example. Workforce that we recognise are inexperienced in the communications with parents around a really stressful subject. So what we've done about that is we've recognised that cohort and we've put some extra training in around customer care, customer service, that sort of stuff. These are what the complaints are generally about. They are this is what we've done about it, because we want to know then how we're improving it. Does that make sense? I'm looking around the room to people.
Councillor Martin?
Perfect sense, because we've asked for it in the past.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, I think when I was on the committee before, I made that request. They're actually, because even if it's just presented as a bit of a case study, but I just think that we need that meat on the bones. You can't understand without that context.
Yeah.
So it has been asked for before. We haven't had it, so I think it would be really helpful if we did.
Thank you, councillor Barton. Councillor Manning?
You've got the job now. Yeah, well, yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah. Just can't sort of get my head around page 65, statutory complaints. We're given the chart numbers, 21, 22 is 27 complaints, to 22, 23, 8. Then this peak to 50, 23, 24. I think the question I have is, was that around, would that been around a particular issue or anything that's triggered that to sort of rise to 50, in kind of that space of time, if you know what I mean? Yeah.
I think, sorry, Jeanette. I think a lot of the statutory complaints, it's been reviewed and over-reviewed on the getting the best from complaints. There was a period of time where the legislation for statutory complaints is very, very, very woolly. It was wrote in 2009 and the LGO are looking at possibly reviewing it. The LGO have really tightened up on the statutory complaints, and that jump is really reviewing the complaints from where they sat to where they should sit. So we spent a lot of time with the LGO, who tend to, let's say, interpret the statutory regs in a different way, dependent upon who's obviously leading at the time. But that was to reviewing the complaints. So a lot of the complaints, say for instance, that sat within CDT were being logged, and they should really be logged as statutory complaints, not logged as corporate complaints, because that's why you've had the shift in a lot of cases, is how they've been reviewed. We've undertaken a lot of training with the LGO under the statutory regs, but as I say, the statutory regs are being looked at. Just to make you aware, the LGSCO in April introduced a new code of practice. So all corporate complaints that sit within 20 working days are now going to be 10 working days, which is obviously going to have an impact on all of the services. Can I answer your question?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, but by all means, thank you.
Yeah. In the purpose of the report is to be published. Obviously, it's public, a public document. But there's nothing saying that along this report, we could bring an example of a complaint that's possibly gone through the processes. What's been, I think a better example would be a statutory complaint, because it's a 3-stage process. It shows what's happened as an independent review, because they're independently reviewed, they're not reviewed by anyone from the council. The outcome of that report, the learning from that, what's been implemented from that. So we could do that, but it would have to be more of an addendum or an added to it, but not obviously to be shared. So we could look at doing that for the annual report, or possibly with the quarterly report. So to just anonymise it, but give you an idea of from beginning to the middle to the end, and the learning and what possible changes of practice has come through from that. So we could do that, but obviously we couldn't do it within the annual report. So that's probably why it's never been bought, because this is a public document that obviously we couldn't share that. Tried to share the learning, but again, you have to anonymise everything, and it has to be really, you have to be really careful.
I think through you, Chair, that would be great. It just gives that extra context to it, so we sort of go, okay, we can see that. But I also think if we were going to go and down that as well, it's always good to accent the positive as well, because we've got some great comments in here around. So it's not, let's not just look at the complaints. Let's put the compliments and the comments in there that are positive as well. Anything that really sort of helps to bring it to life to fellow members here. But let's yin and yang it and make sure we've got the positive as well as the complaints in there.
Councillor Smith, I think for me, and sorry to be a downer, the one that stands out for me under corporate issues on the chart is the 44 in staff attitude and behaviour. And I wouldn't expect that to be so high. That seems quite concerning. Is that a concern?
Yeah. Staff attitude and staff behaviour is quite a wide variant of a title. And sometimes people's expectations of what you're telling them isn't really what they want to hear. So they'll automatically want to raise a complaint because they don't like what someone said or what someone's telling them that they can't do and what they can do. So even though it is a big figure, that covers quite a multitude of areas. We have a number of people that will phone up and complain, shout, they want someone sacked, they've told me to do this. And when you look at the legislation, well, yeah, really that they can't do that. And it's very difficult, isn't it? Because you're dealing with people and so it is a very wide-ranging subject, which comes back to your comment where if you could show an example of something, it's people's expectations and managing their expectations as well. It's a bit of a balancing act. So yes, it is a high number, but it's what you have to put it under something, doesn't it? So if you don't like how that I've spoken to you, it would be a staff attitude. And you might not like what I've said to you, as in the content of it, not like how I've said it to you. I'm not trying to be condescending.
No. I can appreciate that. Yeah. And just in response then, for me, I suppose if I was looking at these numbers, I'd want to see maybe perhaps in the future, how many of those 44 might have been upheld. Because like you say, if it is such a wide spectrum, sort of what is being disappearing and what is upheld, how much of that 44, how much of that communication is upheld?
Yeah, okay.
Maybe.
We can do that breakdown on the report, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Bevan.
Thank you. This is just continuing on from your point really through you, Chair. I think obviously having examples of upheld and non-upheld complaints would allow for that context as well, because you know we're all familiar with the situation where if you are told information that you don't like, then immediately it's that person that has wronged you, and it isn't necessarily the case at all. I'm an English teacher and I wrong people every single day when I ask them for very basic things. But the reality of that is if we have the context of, right, this is an upheld complaint, here's a list of things that haven't been upheld, it might just allow us to go, okay, yeah, we can understand why there's a 44 there. We can understand why there's a 53 in that EHCP, because, you know, a delayed EHCP could be by a day. You know, with that context, it just allows for potentially less awkward questions such as, well, why is that so high? There's something behind it, because obviously there is a reason behind all of these numbers. It's an emotionally charged subject for parents, for carers, for children as well. And just echoing what everyone said, that context will just support that, really. That was all from me. Not really a question, more just a comment.
Finish on questions? Okay then, go on to the next item.
Yeah, just to summarise, thank you, Councillor Lewis, for chairing that section of the meeting. I'll tell you why in just 1 second why I had to leave the room. But just to kind of sum up for the notes, I think this report was quite well received. We appreciate the context that it was set in, particularly around explaining the percentage of which the complaints were upheld. And I think it's fair to say from the comments we received tonight is that we would in future like to see a little bit more context, particularly explaining some of the complaints processes. But with that, Tracy, thank you very much for the report, and thank you for meeting with us before this meeting as well to help us prepare. So moving on to agenda item 9, I don't believe there were any questions submitted before this meeting.
There are none, Chair, now.
But just before we close this meeting, on this script I was given this evening, I'm advised to wish you all a safe journey home. There's a very real element to that tonight. Outside the front of the building, we have a demonstration ongoing. I believe the current best advice is to leave for the exit, but do check with reception on your way out. Make sure you don't linger around the building just for your own personal safety. But with that, I wanted to say one final thing, which is a thank you to our officers for I acknowledge the increased workload throughout August, when many of you will be spending time with your families to produce this report. But it's of importance to me as chair and as vice chair, if I speak for you, Councillor Lewis, that we are able to discuss items in depth and in detail, and given them the respect and the time and the attention they deserve. So with that, and at the risk of making myself very unpopular there may well be more meetings to come before the end of the municipal year. But thank you very much for attending, and do have a safe journey home. Thank you.
Yeah, I should do.
To say there's people still hanging around. He's in that sort of. Sort of, no,